welcome to another episode of Brettcast Movie and TV Talk. Yeah, so there were some things that I forgot to mention in my original discussion video for the Bumblebee movie, so I decided to do a secondary video on this. So the first thing I want to talk about is the music. There really isn't much of a score in the movie, as this movie does the Guardians of the Galaxy thing of featuring more of the soundtrack over the score, and that's fine. But in both cases, both movies have a really nice score. Yeah, I found the score to Bumblebee done by Dario Marianelli with 24 tracks and is really good score in my opinion. This doesn't mean that I dislike the fact that the movie uses the soundtrack over the score, because the soundtrack is great and filled with some great 80s rock hits, with the exception of the credits song being a modern pop song that was actually done by the actress who plays Charlie in the movie, Haley Steinfeld. Yeah, apparently she's also a singer, so good for her. I don't like or follow modern pop music, so I didn't know that. I was especially flattered that they used Stan Bush's The Touch in the movie. I was saying it the whole time during the movie that this was all the movie needs is that song, and they actually do it. Not the whole song, but it was still in there. It's a pretty solid soundtrack, so in this one instance, I'm okay without the score getting as much use in the movie. I still stand by what I said in my first video, that I still can't think of a single negative thing to say about this movie, but I did notice some odd things that, they're not bad, they're just weird. One of those is that the weapon that Dropkick used on the two human people to vaporize them into goo or something. But that trailer park guy deserved it totally. I also found it odd that after acquiring their car modes in the trailer park, that Shatter and Dropkick would just reveal themselves to those humans. They're even though you gooed one of them, that woman knows you exist, and she probably took a while to process what she saw and experienced, that she may have just went nuts. Anyway, yeah, they're Decepticons, and they probably don't care that much about staying in disguise anyway. Still, on Shatter and Dropkick, I appreciated how they first acquire their car modes, and later in the movie they get their secondary modes of a jet for Shatter and a helicopter for Dropkick. I don't know if I mentioned that in my original video, but it doesn't matter, because I really liked that they didn't just get their first alt modes and then happen to already have their second alt modes. Something I especially wanted to mention is that Travis Knight made a statement of how he wanted to have Megatron in the opening sequence in The Fall of Cybertron, but considering that the movie has to be a prequel to the 2007 Transformers movie, he couldn't use Megatron because at the time he would have had been frozen in the ice on Earth waiting to be discovered by Sam Witwicky's great-grandfather. I for one can appreciate that, because he didn't want to break the continuity of the first Transformers movie. I mean, yeah, it would have been pretty badass to see a G1 designed Megatron on the battlefield at the Fall of Cybertron, but this makes things that we were told in the 2007 movie make sense. That being that once the Autobots launched the Allspark into space, that Megatron pretty quickly left Cybertron to go after it, and then the Fall of Cybertron took place after he had already left. So yeah, this is quite different from how the Align continuity does it, starting with the Cybertron games, that Megatron was on Cybertron the whole time until the Ark and the Nemesis went through a collapsing space bridge, like in Fall of Cybertron, the video game. Yeah, they used G1 designs and a photorealistic Cybertron, but that uses the continuity that the live-action movies set up, and I like it. Again, it's like saying G1 and the Bay universe can coexist. Another thing I wanted to bring up is that there was also a 4-issue prequel to this this movie. It was a comic book published by IDW. The comic takes place in the Cold War era, and I read the whole thing to be fully prepared for this movie so that nothing would go over my head. And was it worth it? I mean, I love Transformers comics, so yeah. But in terms of the movie, I would say it wouldn't have mattered, because there was one Sector 7 guy that mentioned losing the Cold War or something like that. But this made me think of the timeline of the comic and the movie. This is because of a few things. See, in the movie, Cybertron's falling and B launches and goes to Earth. That was very quick in the movie. B launches, go to introduction of Sector 7, and then bam, B crashes on Earth and gets chased by Sector 7 in a fight with Blitzwing and then goes unconscious and stuff. Add to that in the 2007 movie they say Megatron crash landed and was moved to the Hoover Dam by 1938, so that would have been before the fall of Cybertron according to the Bumblebee movie. The question is, what year is it when B landed on Earth? Well, considering that Agent Burns was there and looks the same across the whole movie, it would have been the same year the movie happens, which is like 1984 or 1986, whichever one it is. Now, the comic that has B in the Cold War, and its ending is one of those to be continued type, with him trying to hunt down and eliminate Blitzwing after killing somebody that was close to him. I'm wondering if anything of this really happened in the movie universe or not. It raises a lot of questions that I don't need answers to, and I'm only bringing them up for the sake of conversation. I enjoy the comic myself, but if it's supposed to coincide with the movie and be a part of the movie universe, it just seems like they skipped the fact that these events of the prequel comic happened. But whatever, it doesn't negatively affect the movie to me. Now, an odd thing with the end of the movie is that the last thing I want to talk about. So you have B scan the 1971 Camaro and then drives off and is with Optimus Prime, and they have a little talk in the forest or whatever. That was interesting because B was in the Camaro alt mode, but like his CGI mode is not that of the one used in 2007 movie. It was more of the way his CGI model for his robot mode only slightly changes between the acquiring of each alt mode. Like really only his chest ever changes. When he's the Cybertronian mode, his Jeep mode, his Volkswagen mode, and his Camaro mode. Every other part of his CGI model for his robots pretty much stays the same, which is just really odd. The other thing I thought of with the end of the movie is how like B just leaves after having this whole adventure and experience with Charlie. So that means that Charlie knows of B's existence, which, I mean, it's one human, right? Oh, and Memo and Agent Burns and the rest of Sector 7 know as well, so... And like, B doesn't want Charlie to forget about him, but how will she explain to her family that she no longer has that yellow Volkswagen Beetle? The rest of her family didn't see B, so they don't know about him, but they know she had a Volkswagen Beetle, right? I'm sure that B isn't going to tell Optimus Prime about Charlie, so he will never know that there's at least 2 other people that know of their existence, aside from Sector 7. Let me break this down with some simple math. So the movie takes place, I'm going to say in 1984, 23 years before the events of the 2007 movie. Charlie was 18 in the Bumblebee movie, so that plus 23 would make Charlie 41 years old in the 2007 movie. So clearly she's still alive by then. Maybe she's forgotten about her adventure when she was 18 with an alien robot, but I mean, that's something I wouldn't let myself forget about. Again, this is all for the sake of conversation, nothing I actually consider to be anything negative nor towards the movie. But yeah, unless something crazy happened to Charlie, she would still be alive through the events of like all 5 of the Transformers movies, and she'd only be 51 years old in 2017 when the events of The Last Night happens. This means that even now, in the Bay universe, that Charlie is still alive out there somewhere each time the world is going to end because of some Transformer-related thing. Now that's everything I have to say about the Transformers Bumblebee movie. Go see this movie and decide for yourself if you think it's good, and support this movie as much as possible so we can get more movies like it. That's all I have to say, so if you want to add to the conversation, leave a comment below. As always, thanks for listening, and goodbye.